somewhat of an interesting quote because it's not exactly right, but it's not exactly wrong either. It says, marriage and God, both are involved in your happiness, but you can't have one without the other. Now, it's true. Both are involved in your happiness. And it's true. You can't have marriage without God, but you can have God without marriage, because I exist. Otherwise, this is just some foolish life I'm living. But here's the secret. I'm married to the church, right? And every religious is married to Christ. So in a sense, I still have a marriage. And in your life, the temptation is, as we talked about with the culture, the temptation is one of two things. It's either you're going to find all of your fulfillment in marriage, and therefore God becomes a secondary or afterthought, or more often than not a thought at all. So you're going to place all of your expectations on your spouse. What's the danger of that? We've been talking about it. They're going to disappoint you. And then you're going to, in some perverse way, think that your spouse, because they didn't fulfill this aspect of your wants, actually doesn't love you. And that's just not true. They clearly love you. They're married to you. That's the most definitive sign of their love for you. So they chose to say yes to you. Okay? But the other temptation is to say that, oh, well, God alone will take care of everything. And my marriage will come together because I'm tending to the things of God, right? Now, tending to the things of God is super important. In fact, it is the priority that should supersede every other priority in your life is your relationship with God. But God willed you to be married for your happiness. So here's the crazy thing. Your vocation for all of you is marriage. And what does vocation do? Get you to heaven. My vocation is priesthood. This is how God willed me to get to heaven, was through the priesthood. God wills those of you who are married to get to heaven through your vocation of marriage. So God wants to use your marriage to bring about happiness in this life and in the life to come. Right? So whenever we're tempted to think, oh, well, I'll just really focus on my relationship with God and not worry about my marriage, that's a big yellow flag. Because what does God want you to do to get to heaven? He wants to work through your marriage. Right? There's a saying with priests, we always say there's no vacation from our vocation. Same with married people. There is no vacation from your vocation of marriage. You may be on a girl's trip or a guy's trip. You're still married, right? You still fundamentally share that vocation, and you can't take any vacation from it. But whenever we treat God and marriage with really the honor they should be treated with, your life and your happiness tend to scale a lot higher. But our distraction and our temptation is to focus on one or the other, or sadly, neither. As y'all mentioned kind of at the beginning of this talk when I asked you, do you pray enough, or what's distracting you from prayer? You mentioned social media, work, just laziness, selfishness, the idea that I need more time to do this thing rather than that thing, right? And that thing is anything other than the thing I need to do. So we can create a lot of excuses for ourselves, and then we wonder, why are we not happy in our marriage? Well, a lot of times it's because you're focused on the wrong thing. You're either focused on God in a way that doesn't help your marriage, or you're focused on anything else in the world but your marriage. So I'm going to finish with three very, very practical things, and then y'all can ask a little bit of question, take some time for questions, and then I got to get moving. So three very, very practical things about your relationship with God and each other. As I said, I've already given you some tips about how much personal prayer time and the tidbit about doing intercessions with each other. First is this. Work on holiness together. You're like, Well, yeah, Father, that's what we're supposed to do, right? That's what you're supposed to do. Here's what I mean by that. How many of you can explain the Mass in great detail? But the Mass is the most, what the church says, the Eucharist is the source and summit of our life. And I believe that with my whole heart, my whole mind, my whole soul, that receiving communion is the central act of my Christian life. I become Christified by receiving communion. But can I explain that to anybody? So you know how generically men know more about cars than women? Generically, it's not always true. You know, it'd be really helpful, guys, teach your wife about cars so that you can do that together. With holiness, one of the problems we have is overwhelmingly we have by the way, I don't change my own oil. I pay somebody else to change my oil. Just being real. Like, that's 2 hours of my life I'd rather spend praying or reading than changing oil. But here's the problem. It tends to be, when we work on holiness, we do it kind of at the expense of the other. Like I said, even if you're just starting to share your intercessions, that's going to help you. But like, what virtues do you need to work on? John was very kind and said he hopes he can enact some of this information I'm sharing with you. The temptation is going to be to change your life radically tomorrow because of things you've heard today, maybe. Don't. Don't try to change a lot of things. Talk about what you've learned today. And maybe change one thing that you really need to work on as a couple. Maybe you need to communicate more about your expectations. Maybe you can do a couple things, but don't try for the shotgun approach, which is do everything at once, but rather with laser-like precision. And for us, it takes a long time. As guys, I'm saying this just as a dude. I know this. Like, if I need to stop a bad habit, it's going to take time. And I'm not going to fix all my problems at once. But if your bad habit is, that you, again, guys tend to do, we cuss too much. Okay. Vanessa, how are you going to help Alberto to cuss less?
Like, every time I cuss, I remember.
You're working on this, yeah. And maybe put a cuss jar in the house, right? And say, we're going to give that to charity. Like, this is going to go towards, and therefore it's going to a good thing, right? But don't try to fix the other problems that Alberto's trying to work on, because maybe Alberto's not ready to do that yet. We just have a real bad habit of working on holiness in isolation and not with each other. So as a wife, as a mother, maybe there's something you need to be working on too in terms of self-discipline or understanding. Maybe it's not that you have big self-discipline issues. Maybe it's you want to pray 5 more minutes a day. And it may be that you need to start with those baby steps and say, hey, Alex, I'm going to try to pray an extra 5 minutes every day. Can you check on me next week and just see how that went? Don't try to pray 30 more minutes a day because you're going to fail. But maybe you can edge away. So working on holiness together. Some of it's accountability, and there's also the excitement of working literally. Like, I think about this a lot with my nephews and nieces. My sisters ask me, hey, we're going through this issue, like gender, all that stuff, like talking to their kids. I've read tons of books, but I'm like, first things first. Like, they're really going to struggle to understand some of these concepts. So rather, why don't you talk about the dignity of being created in the image and likeness of God? Let's just start there. Do they understand who they are? Do we understand who we are? And then maybe you can get into these bigger issues, right? But understanding that you can work on that together. So maybe it's that Brian needs to read When Harry Became Sally. That's a very good book. I would encourage you to read it. It's about the legal issues that have come up with transgenderism. And then you can read a book like, give a dry mouth. I'm trying to remember the name of the title of it right now. It's by Deborah Soh, S-O-H. I can't remember the title. I think it's called The End of Sex, actually. But it's by a very different author and from a very different perspective. But both are giving us really good information. So the two of you can work on it together with each other. right? In terms of how do I intellectually defend the church's teaching on anthropology, that there are men and that there are women, right? That's going to help you if you're doing it together. So first thing is work on holiness together. It's also fun to do team activities, right? Just doing something together rather than doing it alone usually makes it a better thing. Okay? Second thing is, and again, it's kind of more broad information, but trying to help you a little bit. In the next 1 to 3 years, I can spell, I promise. You need to make sure your spouse goes on a retreat. In the next 1 to 3 years, your spouse deserves and should go on at least a weekend retreat. I would encourage more the longer you've been married. So like you all said 20-something years, John and Susie? 21 years? 24? Okay. So maybe it's not the worst or the easiest thing to do, but could John go on a 3 to 5 day retreat? Right, could you? Yeah. But do we ever prioritize that? No. You might go on an Acts retreat, which is it's a good retreat. Or Chirp, I don't know what they do. Athens, I know, runs a lot of retreats. But have you ever been on a silent retreat for 2 days? You have, Anna? And was it?
It's not easy.
It's not easy, right. But you learn a lot about yourself in those in 2 or 3 days. And this is one of those things you discuss with your pastor. He probably knows you. He does know you better than I know you. But it may not be that you should go on a 3-day silent retreat. But can you get away to a 3-day retreat of any kind? Yes, you can, if you make it a priority for your spouse. Why do I think this is important? Because remember how I mentioned I go on 30 days of vacation roughly a year? I usually go on 16 days of retreat during the course of a year. Now, once a month, I take a whole day off with no technology and don't talk to anybody and just basically pray and read that whole day. So that's part of these retreat days. So that's 12 days. But then the church requires me to take 5 days of retreat also. So usually I have about 15 to 16 days of where I'm not talking to anybody and nobody's talking to me, and it's glorious. It's me and God, and that's it, right? Can you imagine the silence in your home? No. I mean, she's literally playing with a bottle right now. But why is it important that you have this time of retreat? Well, a retreat is intended to help clarify, to a great degree, what's going on between you and God and you and your spouse. Maybe it's that you need to go on a couples retreat. I wouldn't say it's the first thing I would do. Individual retreats tend to be very helpful because it prepares you better as an individual to engage in your life as a couple. But getting sometime in the next 1 to 3 years going on a retreat, and then here's the crazy part, you should do it pretty much every year after that, or maybe every other year. And I know it may sound difficult. It could be as simple as, and I mean this, guys, if y'all like hiking, for example, ask a priest to go, ask Father Bolin. Father Bolin's an outdoorsy guy. Go on a tent camp hike for like 2 nights. And just have that time to talk about God and be away from the world, right? Ladies, he'd probably be just as willing to go to like a bed and breakfast if that's what you needed. But if that's what you want. You might be campers yourself and want to go outside and just enjoy the stars. But whatever that may be. But really, having a retreat in your life needs to be a priority because we need to retreat from the world. It's just absolutely vital, and it'll help you be a better spouse.
Question.
Yes.
Retreat like as in self-time to yourself, not necessarily like a spiritual retreat, but like time for yourself is what you're saying?
Yes, but it needs to have a very strong spiritual focus. So it may be that you go by yourself and take the Bible and take the catechism, and that's what you're going to do for a couple days, just away from everything. That's fine. I would generally recommend you be with at least a retreat director if you could. So you can go stay at monasteries and convents sometimes, and all you're doing is going to Mass while you're there, and otherwise you're just going to be on your own. but you're around people who are focused on holiness. Yeah, it may be that this is just a 3-day getaway to some cabin in Arkansas for, just to clear your mind, basically. But to be doing so with God, and not just literally nothing.
Just asking, because
Yeah.
retreat for us is, well, what we were raised on is, it's like a program of something.
Curcio, yeah.
Yes.
Right, and that can be a retreat that you want to go on, but a lot of times we mature out of that. And serving on a retreat is not counting for your retreat, FYI. Because I know that temptation exists. Like, oh, well, if I go and serve on the Acts retreat, that means I went on a retreat. No, you worked a retreat. Two very
You
different.
should offer a golf retreat.
I would love, man.
You put that together, I'm in. You
I'm
just tell me.
gonna have to keep. I gotta freaking find time. That's the problem. But like, my problem, I would love to. I'm actually going to Hot Springs Village in October for my 40th birthday with 4 other priests or 5 other priests, and it's gonna be retreat-like because we're all gonna say mass and all this stuff, and then we're gonna go play golf. But yeah, man, golf is, for me, it's like a retreat every time I play because I play by myself a lot. All right, I gotta get back to this. I gotta finish up.
Sorry.
So that's okay. Work on holiness together. 1 to 3 years, go on a retreat. And the third thing is, and I know this is also very difficult, but I can't stress it enough. You need to go to mass on your own occasionally, without your spouse, without your kids. I know that sounds almost counterintuitive, but
How does that happen?
I know y'all have a pretty challenging situation with eight children, but I don't know what time daily masses are here.
8:30.
8:30 typically in the morning. Okay.
8:30 on Wednesdays, it's at 6.
Okay, so
Always
Wednesday
in.
at 6. Maybe during, I don't know, once every other month, Brian can get home in time to watch all the kids, and you can come, or to be dad, and you can come to the 6 p.m. mass by yourself. That may have to be what you can do once a semester, but just every once in a while. And why do we need that? Why do we need me time with God in mass? Well, first of all, because frankly, when you're sitting next to somebody else, you guys are working, you're singing, right? You've got kids, you're dealing with kids, right? And even when you're sitting next to your spouse and it's just the two of you, your spouse can be really distracting. Why? Because you're attracted to your spouse, right? And you're just like, oh, she's really cute. My wife's really cute. Or he looks pretty good today. You're just thinking about things that are not of God, right? And it's not even that they're evil thoughts. It's not like you're not sexualizing your spouse. It's just like, I'm not thinking about God. And the nice thing is when you go by yourself, sit way at the front and just stare at him and let him stare at you. It's crazy to think. And maybe you can't do that right now because of your state in life. Can you get to the church for adoration? And I'm saying like literally, for some of you, like y'all's situation, and you have 4 kids, it's pretty tight right now in terms of spare time, but could one of you get to daily mass every once in a while without the other? Maybe. Or on a Sunday, even crazier. And that's generally, I wouldn't recommend it on a Sunday, like go as a family on a Sunday. But can you come back in Sunday afternoon while the Cowboys are getting beat by whoever? And, because that's just reality.
Hey, it's our year this year, okay?
It's our year.
It's our year this
every
year.
year.
It's okay, all right?
Listen, I was alive when we won back in the day. Like, I remember the glory days.
We'll
But
get back there one
we'll
day.
get back there eventually, God willing. But, but on Sunday afternoon, is the church door open?
Yes.
As far as I know, it is.
They're open all the time. They close at 9.
Basically, yeah, and ours is, we open up at 7 in the morning, we close usually 6 really, and then we close at 9 p.m. So just taking that little half hour that maybe you set aside for daily prayer and saying, once in a while, that's the best you can do because you can't get to mass. It's really good to receive communion and have a whole mass where you're able to be individually focused. But if you're not, get to adoration. But just write it down. So.
Can we sit in separate places, like across?
Yeah, if that's what works, that's also not a bad idea. Yeah, if you come on a Sunday and you're not able to get these individual times, but you're both at Mass on Sundays. You don't have to sit with each other during Mass if you don't have kids, right? But why is this important? Well, it's important for two reasons. No one loves you and knows you better than God. Period. No one loves you and knows you better than God. Like, the person in the world that I know loves me more than anybody else is my mom. My dad too, but I feel the affection of my mom's love in a way distinct from how I feel my dad's love. I love spending time with both my parents. But just being in the presence of them, as I mentioned before, fills me with great joy, fills my love tank. But being in the presence of God is a billion times better. And that's not just because I think it is, it's because I know it is. And I know how he's changed my life by simply being in front of him and letting him be in front of me. So I want to encourage you to think about that as spouses. These are kind of 3 gifts you can give to each other to keep yourselves yoked to Christ. Work on holiness together. Make sure you get on a retreat and give each other the chance. Maybe once a month, maybe for some of you, again, if you don't have kids, you could do this pretty easily once a week. But to just get that time of intimacy with the Lord alone, so that you can in turn, here's the good news, spouses, your spouse will benefit from you having that time with the Lord. Your husband will be a better husband because he's a better son of God. Your wife will be a better wife because she's a better wife of God, or a better daughter of God. What a great gift. There's no better gift you could give to each other. Okay, I'm done with my formal comments, and I'll take a few questions before I get going. You can turn that thing off.
Do you have recommendations on a silent retreat?
So I